Hi, I'm Bunny Cakes and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do a May wrap-up. Um, but unlike most wrap-ups you're used to seeing, I don't actually have the physical books with me because all of the books I read this month were library books, as most of the books I read usually are. And so I'm going to be inserting the books I mentioned, like in this region, through the magic of editing. So the first book I read in May was The Shining. It was a reread for me. Um, and I've just been sort of going through Stephen King's massive amount of published books and trying to catch up and read everything because he's got several TV shows and movies based on his books coming out this year. The Shining doesn't happen to be one of them, but last year he had a book called Doctor Sleep that he came out with that was a sequel to The Shining, and I wanted to read that, so I wanted to go back and reread The Shining, so I was kind of up on it again. Um, the Shining is based on some terrible events that happen at an isolated hotel called the Overlook during the off season, and the protagonist is a boy named Danny who has psychic powers called the Shining, and the evil forces that basically run the hotel are driving his father insane. Um, Most people probably, even if they haven't read the book, know the story of The Shining because there was the movie with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, and then there was a remake TV movie that came out a while later. I don't recall it doing as well. I remember watching it myself, and I didn't think it was as good as the Stanley Kubrick movie. Um, but the book was really good. The Shining is probably one of my favorite Stephen King books. It just drew me in, and while it didn't scare me because nothing really does anymore, um, it totally took me into the story in a way that I don't see from a lot of books anymore. The next book I read was another Stephen King book. It was The Drawing of the Three. Um, it is part of the Dark Tower series, which is going to be a movie with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey that comes out, I want to say, in September. Um, and I am trying to read the Dark Tower series, get as deep into it as I can before September rolls around and the movie comes out because I don't know how deep into the series the movie is going to go. And I had never read any of the Dark Tower books. I'm now getting ready to start the third book, but I finished The Drawing of the Three in May, and it follows the gunslinger, and he meets Eddie Dean and Detta Holmes and a serial killer, and they work to stop that person, and they join up together as a team, and it's a really good book, and I think this easily could have been a part of another book, because it doesn't really drive the story farther along, except for that it's kind of like a backstory for the two new teammates that the gunslinger has. You don't learn any more about uh, well, you do learn some of the backstory about the Man in Black and the quest that Roland the gunslinger is on. I really enjoyed it, and it was one of those books that, while it seemed kind of fillery, it definitely made me thirsty for more. The third book that I read was called Feminism Reinventing the F Word, by Nadia Abushnob Higgins, and I know I probably mangled her name. Um, I couldn't find anywhere where it told me how to pronounce her name, and I'm sorry about that. Um, it is about equal rights, and it talks about how um, feminism needs to be intersectional and how it can be intersectional, and it talks about the various waves of feminism, and even how feminism helps men, even though many men don't realize it. Um, it's, I think, a great book. It's a young adult book, I believe. I found it in the young adult section of my library. Um, but I think it would be beneficial for adults and men and literally anybody to read this book. The next book I read was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, from the Hogwarts Library by Newt Scamander and J.K. Rowling. This one was just a quick, fun read. It came out as a companion book to the Beetle the Bard Tales. Um, and it was just cute and fun to read, and it gives you little facts and details about various beasts in the Harry Potter world. Some of them are mentioned in the movies and some of them aren't. And it's just one of those little kind of tidbit books that I read in an afternoon, and it made me feel a little that much more connected to the Harry Potter universe. The next book I read jumped back into the horror scene. It was Endless Night by Richard Lehman, and it's about this 16-year-old girl, and the only reason she's still alive is because she was sleeping over at her best friend's house, and a group of killers broke in and started murdering her friend's family, and they didn't know she was there. And she, while they're busy killing people, she slips out and she rescues her friend's brother, and the two of them get away, and they're being chased by the killers throughout the whole book, and her and her family go on the run, and it's just a classic scary story. um it really pulls you in, and as I was reading this book, i had I had thought that I don't understand why Richard Lehman didn't become just as famous as Stephen King and Dean Koontz. They actually both had blurbs on the cover of this book talking about how good it was. It's definitely gory. There are some graphic sex and rape scenes, so there is need for trigger warning here, but oh my god, it was so amazing. And I actually heard about this book from Peter Mon. Richard Lehman is one of his favorite authors, and he talked up Endless Night so much that I went out to find it, and I ended up having to get an interlibrary loan in order to find it, but I'm so glad I did, and I am going to delve deeper into the world of Richard Lehman. I'm disappointed kind of that he has passed away and there won't be anything new from him, but I highly, highly recommend Richard Lehman, and especially Endless Night, if you are looking for a new horror author to read. And the last book I read for the month of May was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, or Mass. I've heard it pronounced both ways. This one had some Beauty and the Beast kind of elements to it. Feyre finds herself in a situation where it's life or death, and this beast comes to find her and offers her a chance to live, but she has to live forever in the world of the fairies. And she finds out after she agrees to this that he's actually a fairy. And there's a curse on this fairy's kingdom, and there's a lot of evil and weird stuff going on that she doesn't understand at first. And then she develops a close relationship with the fairy, and at the moment I am blanking on his name. Tamlin. Tamlin is his name. And they kind of have to come together and break the curse. Hopefully, that's what the story is. And so you definitely see a lot of Beauty and the Beast elements there. And though Farrah can't read, so instead of giving her a huge library. There's a huge library in the book, but instead of giving her a huge library, once they start to fall in love, he gives her um, a room to paint in and art supplies and stuff, because that's what she does. And it's kind of cute, and then the story gets really dark. And I found myself thinking, like, in the last couple of chapters, I had like less than 100 pages left, and I was like, there's no way they're going to tie this up in a satisfying way, because there's just not enough room left. But they did. They tied it up in a way that this could easily have been a standalone book, but I am so glad that there is a sequel. There's actually a sequel and then a third book, which just came out this year. I want to say it came out last month. Um, and I actually do have the second book on hand ready to read, and I have the new book, the third book, I have reserved in the e-library that my library has, so that I can hopefully read all three of them very soon. But yeah, this month was a pretty good month for me. I read 6 books, despite battling various illnesses and having a busy life. So that's my wrap up, and I hope you guys had a good month reading. Please share down below what you read or what you thought of the books that I've read. And yeah, follow me on all my social media. It's linked down below, and keep reading.